In the heart of Africa, the Democratic Republic of Congo has been ravaged by one of the deadliest conflicts the world barely talks about. At the center of it all, the M23 rebels, a group whose rise is rooted in a complex web of ethnic rivalries, regional power struggles, and the haunting legacy of the Rwandan Genocide. But who are the M23 rebels really, and what forces have driven them to fight for control in one of the most unstable regions on Earth? So in this episode of Africa in History, we dive deep into the M23 rebellion, tracing the roots of the conflict from the fall of Mobutu Sese Seko, one of the most brutal dictators of Africa, and the betrayal of Rwanda, to the rise of the militant groups like the FDLR and the M23 rebels. This isn't just a story about rebels, it's a story about regional politics, international intrigue, and the devastating cost of war in one of the most resource-rich yet conflict-torn nations. The origins of the M23 rebellion in the Democratic Republic of Congo (DRC) are deeply rooted in the turbulent history of the region. At the heart of this story are two pivotal events: the 1994 Rwandan Genocide and the fall of Mobutu Sese Seko in 1997. You see, in 1994, the Rwandan Genocide devastated the country as extremist Hutus orchestrated the mass slaughter of Tutsis and moderate Hutus. In the aftermath, millions of Hutu refugees fled Rwanda, many seeking refuge in the neighboring Zaire, which later became DRC. Among these refugees were perpetrators of the genocide, complicating the situation of their hosts. The arrival of these refugees in the eastern DRC intensified ethnic tensions and led to formation of armed militias, particularly the Hutu-led FDLR, which was the Democratic Forces for the Liberation of Rwanda, which posed a direct threat to the Tutsi communities in the region. So in 1981, under the leadership of President Mobutu Sese Seko, the Democratic Republic of Congo, then Zaire, enacted a law that significantly impacted the citizenship status of certain ethnic groups. Now you see, this legislation explicitly revoked the citizenship status of many Banyarwanda people in Kivu region, with the exception of the native Banyabwisha. Now furthermore, it barred individuals from Rwandan descent from holding any public office. Now this move not only marginalized these communities but also fueled anti-Banyarwanda sentiment amongst the local ethnic groups. The Banyamulenge, a Tutsi-speaking group residing in the South Kivu highlands, were among those profoundly affected by this law. Now despite their long-standing presence in the region, the Banyamulenge faced systematic discrimination and often perceived as foreigners due to their Rwandan ancestry. Now the 1981 citizenship law exacerbated their statelessness, leaving them vulnerable to various forms of persecution. Now in the mid-1990s, tensions escalated as the Zairian army under Mobutu's directive launched attacks against the Banyamulenge communities, aiming to expel them from their homes. So in response, the Banyamulenge, with support from the Rwandan government, organized an uprising against the local government. Now, this rebellion served as a catalyst for the formation of the Alliance of Democratic Forces for the Liberation of Congo, the AFDL, led by Laurent Kabila. Now, the AFDL, comprising of various groups including the Banyamulenge militia, received backing from neighboring countries like Rwanda and Uganda. Now, together, they advanced through Zaire, ultimately overthrowing Mobutu's regime in 1997. Now, the alliance between the Banyamulenge and Kabila was instrumental in dismantling Mobutu's long-standing rule. However, this partnership was fraught with complexities. Now, after ascending to power, Kabila's relationship with his former allies, including the Banyamulenge, became strained, leading to further conflicts in the region. Now, this period underscored the intricate interplay between the ethnic identities, citizenship laws, and political alliances in the Democratic Republic of Congo's tumultuous history. Now, when Laurent Kabila assumed power, his leadership promised a new chapter for DRC. But it quickly became clear that his presidency was fraught with challenges. Now, Kabila's decision to expel the Rwandan and the Ugandan troops that had helped him overthrow Mobutu led to outbreak of the Second Congo War in 1998. Now, this war, also known as the Great War of Africa, involved not just the DRC, but also several of other of its neighbors, including Rwanda, Uganda, Angola, each of whom had their own interests in the region. Now, under Kabila's rule, the DRC became battlegrounds for regional powers and their proxies. Now, his reliance on ethnic policies alienated key communities. Now, this led to the rise of groups like the RCD, a rebel movement that included many Tutsi fighters. Now, the discontent among the Tutsi population was significant, and it led to formation of further armed groups like the CNDP, which was the National Congress for the Defense of the People, which would later play a crucial role in the formation of the M23. Now, in 2001, Kabila was assassinated, and his son Joseph Kabila inherited a fractured, war-torn nation. Now, the transition of power did little to stabilize the country, as Joseph struggled to assert control over the competing rebel groups and foreign powers which vested interests in the region. Now, during the Second Congo War, the DRC became a hotbed for various rebel movements, each with different motivations and allegiances. One of the key factions was the RCD, a group that was initially backed by Rwanda and Uganda. However, the RCD itself splintered into multiple factions such as the RCD Goma and the RCD Kisangani, as leaders jockeyed for power. In contrast, the Mai Mai militias were also formed primarily by the local Congolese groups who sought to resist foreign influence and defend their communities. Now, these militias were often highly decentralized, with local leaders rising to prominence and forming their own armed factions. Now, the Mai Mai hostilities towards foreign intervention, particularly from Rwanda and Uganda, added another layer of complexity to the conflict. Now, during this period also saw the rise of Jean-Pierre Bemba, the leader of the MLC, Movement for the Liberation of Congo, who represented the interests of the northern Congo and had backing from Uganda.
I left all my comfort in Europe and my business was running very well for that cause, to rebel the people of Congo. I know that I'm taking, as always, other friends, a very big risk on my life. Bombardment every day by Kabila, attack from FARC soldiers. We can die anytime, but that is our choice, because we believe that really this time, if there are no few leaders who decide to give their life and to sacrifice themselves, we'll never get freedom in Congo.
Now, on the other side, the FDLR, an armed Hutu group comprised mostly of genociders, continued its operation from the eastern Congo, exacerbating the ethnic violence. Now, the proliferation of these armed groups not only intensified the violence, but also led to shifting alliances and betrayals, creating an unpredictable and a chaotic environment. Now, Joseph Kabila's tenure as president started in a climate of hope, but quickly descended into frustration. Although his administration sought to integrate rebel fighters into the national army, the process was marred by corruption, ethnic discrimination, and distrust. Now, the government's failure to provide security, justice, or economic development in the east fueled a sense of less hope amongst the Tutsi population, particularly in Kivu provinces. Now, Kabila's attempt at peace, such as the 2006 elections, were widely seen as contentious and failed to unite the country. His government's inability to deliver the promises of peace and security led to deepening ethnic divisions. Now, it was during this time that Laurent Nkunda emerged as a prominent Tutsi leader. Nkunda, a former military commander who eventually led the CNDP, which was formed to defend the Tutsi interests in eastern Congo. Now, Nkunda's growing influence amongst the Tutsi communities became a precursor to the formation of the M23 rebel group, as many of his fighters would later defect to join the rebellion.
How can I serve in the national army when this national army is working with genociders? And the genocide they did in Rwanda, it was against Tutsi. And I'm a Tutsi. That to say it was done against me. If our government cannot be touched by that, now it's not so far a government. It's a crime. It's criminals in power.
The M23 rebellion officially began in April 2012, led by defectors from the CNDP, who had accused the DRC government from failing to honor a 2009 peace agreement. The group, named after the March 23 Accord, initially called for better protection of the Tutsi population and political reforms. However, as the group's influence grew, their demands expanded to include resignation of the President Joseph Kabila and a more significant role for the Tutsi fighters in the national army. Now, the M23 quickly gained control of larger parts of the eastern Congo, including strategically important cities of Goma. Now, allegedly receiving support from Rwanda, the M23 rebels mounted a formidable military campaign, highlighting the inability of the Congolese army to defend the country's eastern borders. Now, Bosco Ntaganda, a former commander of the CNDP, became a key leader within the M23 rebels. His leadership and military strategies were crucial in securing victories for the rebels. Now, his history of human rights violation, including the recruitment of child soldiers, added to the group's success. Now, Nkunda's earlier role in shaping the group's ideology could be seen in the M23's focus in defending Tutsi's interests, though their ultimate objectives were more political. In late 2025, the M23 rebels took control of Goma, a major city in eastern Congo. The capture of Goma was a turning point in the conflict, as it revealed the Congolese army's vulnerability and the growing power of the M23 rebels. Now, Goma is located near the Rwandan border and was an economic hub, and the fall of it was a blow to the DRC government. Now, the international community was forced to respond, and the UN began to ramp up peacekeeping efforts. However, the capture of Goma demonstrated the international community's limited influence over the situation. It was also clear that M23's military strength, allegedly bolstered by the Rwandan support, was a force to be reckoned with. These events forced the international community to confront the reality of foreign intervention in the conflict. Now, the M23 conflict soon took a regional dimension as neighboring countries began to be embroiled in the unrest. Rwanda's alleged support for the M23 rebels fueled tensions with the DRC government, leading to accusations that Rwanda was exacerbating the conflict for its own benefit. Now, Rwanda's President Paul Kagame denied these accusations, but the DRC government and the international community remained firm in their belief that Rwanda was providing significant military and logistical support to the M23. Uganda also came under suspicion for its role in the conflict, with reports suggesting that Uganda's government had been providing covert assistance to the rebels. Now, these regional dynamics complicated peace efforts as neighboring countries prioritized their own political and security interests over regional stability. Now, despite efforts from the African Union and the United Nations to mediate and bring peace to the region, the international response to the crisis was largely ineffectual. Now, the DRC government's failure to implement meaningful reforms and address root causes of the conflicts only deepened the crisis. In the late January 2025, as the M23 rebels advanced into Goma, the largest city in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo DRC, nearly 300 European mercenaries, primarily from Romania, found themselves cornered. These mercenaries had been hired by the DRC government to support its military, the Armed Forces for the Democratic Republic of Congo, the FARDC, in combating the M23 insurgency. Facing defeat, they surrendered to the M23 rebels and subsequently crossed into Rwanda. Now, the Rwandan authorities received them and facilitated their repatriation to their countries of origin. The deployment of these mercenaries was part of DRC's government strategy to bolster its military capabilities against the M23 rebels, who have been a dominant force in eastern DRC, particularly around Goma. However, the involvement of foreign mercenaries has been controversial and has drawn criticism from various quarters.
Don't joke to M23, my bro. Don't joke. That is army for the people. Don't joke. Don't joke. Move, quickly. Jump, quickly! Hey, quickly!
The M23 rebellion was not just a Congolese issue. It was a regional conflict with international ramifications. Rwanda's involvement, despite denials from Kigali, was a key factor in sustaining the rebellion. The relationship between President Kagame and his DRC counterpart increasingly became hostile as the two leaders engaged in a diplomatic showdown as accusations of support of rebels flew across the border. The involvement of Uganda, although less direct, also complicated peace efforts. Uganda's interests in the region were centered on security and economic consideration, but its support for the rebel groups like the M23 rebels added another layer of complexity. The African Union and the United Nations took on mediation roles but also struggled to effectively address the root causes of the conflict. With each international effort coming up short, the need for local solutions became more urgent. Today, the legacy of the M23 rebels lingers, with the roots of the conflict deeply embedded in the history of the region. Now, while the M23's influence has waned, the political and ethnic divisions that have gave rise to the group has not been addressed. Now, Eastern Congo remains a hotbed of instability, with armed groups continuing to operate in the region. Now, the rise of the M23 rebels serves as a stark reminder of the challenges facing the DRC. Now, to achieve lasting peace, the government must address the underlying issues of governance, ethnic divisions, and regional cooperations. The international communities must remain engaged, but ultimately it must be up to the people of the DRC to forge a path towards stability. So if you found this video informative and engaging, don't forget to give it a like, share, and subscribe to help the channel grow. This has been Reagan for Africa in History, and see you in another video.